what's up? This is Joel from Joel Does Music. This is going to be one hell of a conversation because we are discussing the latest Avenged Sevenfold album, Life is But a Dream. My guest, he is a virtuoso, talented photographer, the one, the only, Nick Palma, and also check out his latest debut solo album, Helix. Hi, Nick.
Thank you very much. That was a very kind introduction. Thank you for having me. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
It is, because we're both huge Avenged Sevenfold fans, and the utter chaos that has erupted ever since this new album came out, because it's really bizarre and different compared to their other 7 albums. And I know you have a couple hot takes. I have a couple of hot takes as well. So we figured, let's just get into it and just say our opinions and what we really believe in our hearts about this album.
Yeah.
Cool. So before we get into the meat of it, though, obviously, I want to know more about how you got into Avenged Sevenfold. So when did the band first enter your life?
Okay, so early on, well, it was middle school. I was, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, around there. And one of my friends in school showed me them. And that was around the same time that I was starting to get, pretty serious playing guitar. So it was literally like the perfect that it came together at that time. I can't remember the exact song. I want to say either Backcountry or Afterlife, because if it was something off the self-titled album, it had to be pretty new at that point. So it might have been that. But then, yeah, I mean, after he showed me a couple songs, like I said, that I was starting to get really serious at that point. And then ever since then, to this day, Sinister Gate's my favorite guitar player. And I always say, I've said in other interviews before, if it wasn't for them and him in particular, I honestly don't know if I would have gotten serious about music. Like, that guy was my idol, man. Like, I was the typical, teenage kid with his pictures all over my walls and stuff. and I knew all their songs. I mean, my mom got into them just because I used to play their stuff so much. So it's funny, a couple of weeks ago, she was like in the shower or something, and she plays music in there sometimes, and I heard Afterlife. I was like, what?
Wow, that's amazing.
So it goes back a while. They've been my favorite band for a long, long time.
It's funny that you mentioned like you first discovered them when you were about 13, 14, 15 years old, because I feel like a lot of people within our age group who is into the same music that we are, like hard rock, radio rock, if you want to call it, metalcore, they all discovered those same bands within that same age. Like, I first discovered Avenged Sevenfold when I was about 13 years old, but it was because of Guitar Hero 2, because Beast and the Harlot was a featured song on the track, and I didn't know a single thing about guitar harmonies. I remember there was a video from their live in the LBC live DVD, and the title was just like twin guitar harmonies, and it was Afterlife. I just thought, wow, this is some mind-blowing stuff. As someone who just got back into playing guitar, hearing it, I'm like, what is this? Like, I had no idea what it was, didn't know it had a name. That was my introduction to them. Like, Afterlife and Beast and the Harlot were those two pivotal tracks for me. So I think it's really interesting that you discovered them around that age.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the time where you're like the most impressionable too.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny you brought up Guitar Hero, because I never had Guitar Hero 2, but I did get Guitar Hero 3, I think, for like Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. It sounds funny and ridiculous, but I'm dead serious. That's another thing that pushed me to really become serious about music, because that game was like the hottest thing on the planet. And as someone who was already kind of getting into, that kind of music and guitar specifically, it was like, well, the box looks cool. Like, Slash, I want to be like him. Yeah. And then the whole family's playing the game every night, and that was a big, again, it sounds funny, but that was a big thing for me. I don't remember if they had any songs on 3, but just that time period, like you were saying, of all these things going on at the time for us and our generation was huge.
Absolutely. I mean, kids these days will never get to experience Guitar Hero. It was just, God, what a game, man, to get you into music. Like, I've discovered a handful of bands because of that game. I'm sure you have too. And like, your music
Yeah,
taste was molded because of that game, like you were saying.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, they had some good stuff, man. There was some
Like,
bangers on there.
dude, Guitar Hero 3 was the shit. I can't even say the ish. I'm just going to like PG-13
Okay.
it right now. It was
I
the
was gonna
ish.
ask, so I know. No cursing, right?
I
I'll
almost said
keep
the
it
T. I
clean.
was like, shit, ish.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
I'll keep it clean.
It's
But
crazy.
even like a band like Dragon Force, like they wouldn't
Oh,
be half of what they are if it wasn't for that one song blowing up from that game.
oh my
Like
God.
it's
Yeah.
crazy the impact that it had on certain people and things like that, and kind of pop culture in general.
Oh, definitely. Especially like of the 2000s, like 100%. Huge, important part of the 2000s.
Yeah.
God. So Sinister Gates and Avenged Sevenfold meant a lot to you, like they meant a lot to me growing up and like figuring out my guitar playing style and like what kind of music, I wanted to see was out there and to discover as well. So going through high school, obviously we lost the Rev, Nightmare came out, and then later on, back in 2013, Hail to the King came out, which was definitely like their Black album. So
Hmm.
around that time, like when Nightmare came out and Hail to the King, and then the stage, were you still actively listening to the band, or were you like a little turned off with their musical progression?
No, I was just as excited, if not more excited, for those albums to come out. Um, Especially since, more so now, but they tend to take a long time in between albums. So, when they start like teasing it and stuff, I get really excited. So I was looking forward to it.
So when it comes to the band, I mean, obviously, like you were saying before earlier, like you idolized the hell out of Avenged Sevenfold. What were some qualities that you really admired or made you think, wow, there's no other band like them. They're doing something completely different.
There's a lot, honestly. I'll try to condense it as best I can, but
Sure.
they looked cool. They they definitely looked the part. But if you want to go specifically musically, it was perfect and still is perfect for my taste. Like especially as a young kid who wanted to be a shredder,
Yep.
because to me, like, um, I don't know. I don't know. Some people call it like butt rock or whatever these days. But like, I love rock and metal with like huge catchy choruses, but could still have the heavy parts and the shredding and stuff like that. And that's kind of, that's when you think of them, that's kind of what you think of,
Yeah.
is that like blend together. Um, and I just, to me, it was everything I wanted to hear that I didn't know yet existed yet. So when I slowly started, finding each album and every new album that came out from them, it was like, oh my God, like this is
Yeah.
perfect for me, like this is without a doubt my favorite band. And then again, of course, being a guitar player, that just added a whole other layer to it. But yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the way that they looked because when you compare how they look now to like say the City of Evil era, I mean, some of it was a bit of a hot mess. I mean, I remember Zach Vengeance had the grills on, so the M
Yeah.
Shadows mic. But I feel like you had to go through that phase at some point in the mid 2000s. Like you had a lot of kids, well, full grown adults now at our age, who went through like their emo phase or like their scene phase. You look back on it now, it's funny, but it's also a little bit cringe. Like, what were you doing, Chief? Like, did we really
Yeah,
dress up like that? It's funny to look back in retrospect, you know?
I know. And I was actually thinking about that the other day. It's funny you brought that up because I don't know if I saw, or I saw something modern and it made me think of that or whatever. But the same exact thing you just said, I was like, wow, they look like this now, and they used to look like that. And back then, I thought that was so cool. And now I'm sitting here like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, right. You gain some perspective. You're like, maybe back in that time it was fine, but also grills, man, really heavy eyeshadow, which I'm cool with, man, but it depends on how you pull it off, you know?
Well, that's the thing I was gonna say. And then growing up and like being an artist and being in a band and stuff, I get it, because there are plenty of things I did years ago where I look back and I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? So I totally understand now that I'm older. Like you said, everybody kind of has to go through that, I guess.
Yeah, it's all part of growing up, really. Like, if you've never been through that phase, you're lying to yourself, or you never had like a real proper childhood growing up in the 2000s, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
So moving forward to the new album, Life is But a Dream. So you had, obviously, Waking the Fallen. Well, before that, Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, Waking the Fallen, City of Evil, self-titled, Nightmare, Hail to the King, which is really their Black album, like I'm saying again, and then The Stage. So there was a 7-year gap, which took, oh my God, that was their longest gap, I think, when it came to releasing albums. So then they started to finally tease new music. Where was your head at when they were teasing stuff for the new album? And then when the first single, Nobody, came, what was your reaction when you heard it?
So, like I said before, I was really excited. Like you said, it was way too long in between albums.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest, I had no idea what to expect, because they set you up for that. Like, you can never really know what to expect. And that's another quality about theirs that I like bands that try new things and switch it up and, you know, look different every album or whatever, you know. And then when the single came out, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty disappointed, except for the solo at the end. That was sick. But the song, you know, I listened to it on repeat a couple times, and I still don't think it's that great, but I will say, ever since they started playing shows again, promoting the album or whatever, you know, I've watched some live footage of the new shows, and I will say that song definitely translates really well live. So, you know, it's not my favorite to listen to, but I understand it more now after seeing that footage.
Yeah. I think with this album, it's very different, like you were saying before. But in a way, I think the reaction, well, it's not as big as a reaction compared to this album. But when Self-Titled came out, it was, I think I saw in a Reddit thread, a lot of people were saying that some people didn't like it because it was just too mainstream for them, or just like too left field. Like you had A Little Piece of Heaven, which was obviously a show tunes influenced theme about necrophilia. And you had some country in there with Dear God. So with this album, I understand the backlash because it is extremely all over the place. It's so avant-garde. And with me, when I think of the genre avant-garde, I kind of think of musicians who are just like pure snobs or just arrogant, like, hey, look at me. We're going to go through like a weird, wacky time signature change. Oh, we're going to do a key change. Oh, I'm just going to shred at 220 BPMs just for the sake of it and showing off complexity because I'm capable of it. But it took me one listen, Nick, and I got it. And I know your opinion is so different, but I think it's one of their best. And it's a hot take.
Hey,
I know.
That's fine, man. Like, I guess we'll get into my opinion in a little bit here, but I'm just saying, like, you saying that it took one listen and you got it. Like, all I've seen since this album came out is you either love it or you hate it. Like, I have not seen anybody who is in the middle. So if that's your opinion, then you're definitely not in the minority. I don't think either of us are, honestly, because it seems pretty split down the middle.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying too, these songs really translate well live. Like I saw them at the Garden back in June.
Did you?
Yeah, like last minute, I was like, yeah, why not? Let me go by
I was
myself.
thinking about going, and I kind of wish I did, but
Dude, you should have went. I got my ticket. I think it was section 107 or 116, $80 even.
how was the show?
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like there were some tech issues in the beginning because the band even said it like in between songs that their flight was delayed. They weren't sure they were going to arrive in New York on time. They got there like at the last minute. They couldn't do a proper sound check. So like the first few songs, like the vocals were a little bit like low. And you could hear like the sound guy was like mixing in between songs. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But it was a great show.
Listen, no matter what, a band that caliber is going to kill it live.
Right.
You know, whether you like the new stuff or not, I mean, they're going to put on a hell of a show.
And they did.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right. Well, since we're talking about opinions here, yours is wrong. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, man.
Hey, that's fine, man.
No. Let's go into what you at least liked about the album. Like, I'm sure there are some redeeming qualities, like the solo for Nobody. I think that was definitely the saving grace for this song because Sinister Gates is just phenomenal in his shredding and just his guitar phrasing. So, qualities about the album that you liked.
Okay, so there are, it's not all bad to me. First, I want to say, no matter what my end opinion of it is, I always respect somebody or a band that does whatever they want to do,
right.
Whether you like it or not. Like that's what you should do as the artist. So I have to tip my hat to that. They're kind of like what you were saying before about the avant-garde thing, though.
Yeah.
As much as I respect them like getting as weird as they wanted, to me at a lot of points in the album it kind of sounds like it's weird just for the sake of being weird. I'm not saying that's true or not, but to me I'm like I don't know, man, like because usually a lot of the times if I'm not really into something, I'll keep listening, and then a lot of the times it does click, and I'm like, okay, this is actually really cool. It hasn't happened here yet. I was really hoping it would. Now, not every song. There are a couple that I do really like, but as a whole, I'm just thinking of the album as a whole. For me, it's at the bottom, man, of their discography, and
wow.
I wish it was the opposite. I really do.
Well, that's fine. I mean, listen, music is subjective at the end of the day. Like you were saying 100%. Before, it's either you like the album or you don't. There is like no meet me in the middle here. It's either take it or leave it, literally. But yeah. I will admit, like you were saying about weirdness, and for the sake of it, the most common quote that I've been seeing like on reviews or like Reddit threads discussing the album is embrace the weirdness. And I think that's why I love the album so much, because it is just their weirdest album to date. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that Sinister Gates and the Rev had their project Pinkly Smooth, and that was pure avant-garde and like influenced by Danny Elfman. So I think a lot of people are forgetting that they could compare that discography to the new album. They're just, it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant that you've been going to for years, off the top of your head what you want to order for dinner, and it's always going to be good. But with this band, Avenged Sevenfold, it's kind of like you have this preconceived notion in your head, like, all right, listen, the stage was good, Hail to King was all right, and then Nightmare was amazing. So you kind of know what to expect for the new album. And then when you're served a different entree, it's like, well, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Okay, so before we go any further into that, I actually had a question for you. Yeah, so because someone asked me this the other day, and it just made me think about it. What would you say is like your golden age of Avenged Sevenfold? Like 2 or 3 albums, like what was like the best for you?
Wow. Self-titled, and Nightmare. Like, it sucks because we lost the Rev like when they were recording Nightmare, but that was when like I really started to love Avenged Sevenfold. Self-titled, like the tail end of that era was when I started to listen to them, like just, Beast and the Harlot and Afterlife, like I said before. Those were like my introductory tracks, and I was hooked on those songs. But then Nightmare was just such a special era for me because you could experience the pain and the loss that they were going through. They were just so emotionally vulnerable. They were so raw, and like you could just hear it on that album too. And then with the live shows, it was just a big celebration from watching videos on YouTube. So those two eras were very, very special to me, in the golden era. And Hail to the King, I was like, I heard the album. I was like, okay, Planets, Acid Rain, Shepherd of Fire. Love that track. Awesome. But then I was like, all right, like I still listen to the band. Let me see what else is going to happen. And then the stage came out and I was like, the album was okay. I just felt like it was too proggy for me at times.
So that's funny you said that, because for me, actually, so let me say your answer was almost exactly the same as mine.
Really?
Because mine, for me, it's City of Evil, Self-Titled, and Nightmare. Those three, that this time period right in the middle. Oh, perfect. Perfect, man. Literally, those three albums shaped me as a musician. Shaped me. And then, like you said, Hail to the King, it's got a couple good songs. Mostly a miss, in my opinion. Like, I really never find myself going back to that album too often. But the stage really grew on me. Because it was different, again, like they usually do at first. But it really grew on me. I really like most of it. And I will say, after this new one came out, I went back and listened to everything again, and it made me love the stage even more. And then I was like, the stage doesn't even, that sounds like them. It's not even that weird compared to this one. So,
I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, with the stage, it took me a couple listens to get into it. Like, I remember, the best part about the album was that they surprise released it. They pulled a freaking Beyonce.
Yeah.
So ballsy. Like, it took me a few listens. I did like it. I just thought it was mostly a front-loaded album, with the exception of, I think, Exist is a closing track. That was just such an epic song to close off the album with. And Not Angels, Creating God, that's probably one of my top 3 songs off the album.
Mm-hmm.
But with this album, Life Is But a Dream, I don't know, man. I think it's just because I've listened to a lot of experimental or like ambient bands, or just like bands who really love experimenting with their albums through the years. Like, it kind of just made sense to me. Like, I listen to Radiohead. Each album is vastly unique and different. Just bands like that in that realm. So like, I think that's why it took me just one full listen to really understand the approach that they took with this album. I mean, granted, I do think there are some parts of the album where I'm like, I don't know if that's fully cohesive, or I don't know if I would do that, but then again, they're just masterclass musicians, and I'm just, a local guitar player and lover of music. That's it. So,
yeah. Well, that's kind of the other thing too. And I felt this a little bit with the stage, and totally now with this new one, is it kind of pains me to say, or to even have this opinion, but I've kind of been feeling like their more recent stuff, I've been feeling like they almost write for musicians and not like the casual listener, if that makes sense. And I that's a big reason why I think it's not really as accessible. Like, a lot of the stuff they've done on this new one, and the stage too, you kind of have to be a musician to really appreciate all of it. Like, of course anybody could like good music, but there's, like you said, they're world-class musicians. There's no doubt about that, and they always will be. But I think there's a line between overdoing it and like self-indulging a little too much, and keeping it accessible. And I don't know, man, I feel like they kind of took all their strengths and a lot of the things that people loved them for and kind of threw it out the window on this one.
Yeah, but look, man, here's the thing with musicians or, bands who have been in the game for so long, they've been doing this for 24 years. You have to evolve at some point. Like, if a band were to release the same freaking album, like imagine if they released like all 8 albums as like the same metalcore sound that they start off with.
And I wouldn't want that.
Right. Me neither.
I totally agree. I totally understand what you're saying. I just so was there anything you didn't like about the new one?
Ooh, that's tough. Okay. You're putting me on the spotlight here, Nick. Jesus.
We're just having a conversation.
Well, I will admit that at times it gets a little too crazy for me. Like, I understand it's an avant-garde album, it's experimental, but there's still like a heavy element to it. But I feel like there are just a few moments where I thought they got a little too weird, like you were saying, just for the sake of weirdness, Like,
yeah.
I think like during like the trilogy tracks, like God, like God, God, Ordinary, and Death, I wasn't really vibing that well. I'm like, it's just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many influences into one whole song. And then that's like the end result, It's like you're putting in like techno, dance influences. You have like disco, funk, jazz fusion, hard rock. I just thought like, unlike We Love You, that song was brilliantly executed. But when it came to the trilogy songs, I just thought, all right, it's a little too much for me. I still like them, but it was just too much happening. And it lost focus for me a little bit.
It's funny because that's kind of how I feel about the album as a whole. Like, again, there are a couple tracks that I really like. But when I think of it as a whole, I kind of think of exactly what you just said. Like, there's kind of too many different influences coming together, and it kind of, the cohesion of the album kind of gets lost because of that for me.
Yeah.
And like, I can just rattle them off right now if I wanted to, like from start to finish. I mean, it's kind of crazy how similar a lot of these tracks sound like to other big artists.
Yeah.
And it's still coming through that Avenged filter, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this is like really like System of a Down or Dream Theater or Alice in Chains. And I'm just like, that's cutting it pretty close, because there are a couple tracks where I'm like, I don't know.
So in conclusion, you're not really vibing with the record. City of Evil, self-titled, Nightmare, that was your golden era for the band, basically, like you were saying.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we had this conversation, man, because I know, like, when Nobody first came out, I messaged you, or you posted a story on Instagram, and I was like, yeah, I wasn't feeling it that well either. Like, I'd give it maybe a 7.5 out of 10. I had, like, my gripes with the song, but after listening to the album and seeing it live, whole different story, whole different appreciation for the album and for some of the songs as well.
Yeah, and I'll leave it off on a positive note, just saying the songs that I do really like. They definitely weren't singles. They hid them pretty well. In my opinion, the best songs on the album are Mattel and Cosmic, which I've seen a lot of people saying that, but I definitely agree with. Mattel is kind of like, I guess, the closest thing to what you would kind of expect them to do. But it still has, it's pretty weird at times too. It still has that new kind of thing going on. But, and then Cosmic is just like one of those songs that, like, you listen to it and it just takes you somewhere, like whether you want to or not, you put the headphones in and next thing you know, you're just somewhere else. And it's so emotional, and the instrumentation is beautiful. The vocals are beautiful. So those two are definitely my top two from the new stuff.
Brilliant. My exact thoughts. I'm glad we had the same exact opinions on those two songs. Nick Palma, thank you so much for hanging out, my friend. This was amazing. Glad we got to discuss Avenged Sevenfold and the new album and your experience getting into them. Thanks again so much, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, especially that it's my favorite band. I'll sit here for 5 hours and talk to you about them. But yeah, if you ever want to do this again, just hit me up.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before I let you go, where can anyone who's watching this follow you, get to know you on social media? Give out the handles, brother. Come on.
My handle, Spotify, Apple, it's just my name, Nick Palma. Instagram is basically the same thing. YouTube is the same thing. NICKPALMA. That's all you need to remember. Just put it in, and hopefully you'll see my face somewhere and you'll know it's the right one.
Exactly. And go listen to Helix. It's really freaking good.
Thank you very much.
All right. Once again, Nick Palma, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Let's talk again soon.
All right, for sure.
All right. Take care.